I want to look today at ways to reframe accessibility as a source of innovation. So if you are an accessibility professional and working in that space, this talk is for you. If you are not and you are interested in accessibility, this talk is also for you. I hope after the next 15 minutes that I'm going to talk at you, that you come away with a different perspective on accessibility and how that relates to innovation. Because innovation is not some mythical realm inhabited by just 10x developers and AI moonshots, billion-dollar VC investors. We can use accessibility as a predictable gateway to innovation. All right, so let's dive in. So I think a lot of us have seen this recently. I think every vice president or C-suite leader I have talked with in recent years is obsessed with this word innovation, and they don't really know what that means. But they're yelling innovation at their middle managers. They're yelling innovation at their individual contributors, and they don't know what it means either. Look, people in leadership are just people trying to make decisions, really big decisions, with incomplete information. They do not have complete information. Anyone who offers them a more complete information set with which to make decisions is going to be seen as an asset. And accessibility can be that for them. But anyone who brings them intractable problems all day, every day, is not going to be seen as an asset. Okay, let's think about that for a second and think about who you are in that dichotomy. Now let's start talking about accessibility. So here's how most people think innovation works. I know I used to think this way. There was a time in my life when I saw the world like this. There's kind of this bell curve of people, and some of them are our users, and we really want to focus and innovate for those people in the middle, that average user in the middle. And some of you are cringing right now because I'm saying the word average user. And they see the right thing to do as designed for this average user because that's efficient and that's where the bulk of our customers are. But what really happens is when you design for people with disabilities, for technology cases that you can call extreme use cases. Now notice I didn't say edge cases, I said extreme use cases. On the left and right of these so-called average users, that's where innovation happens. When you push the limits of what people can do with your device, with your application, you create innovation. That's a much cooler way to think about innovation. And what happens is the insights you gain by creating these solutions for people you don't think are average, those get validated by average people. Average people are never a source of innovation. That never happens, but they will validate the solutions you created working for someone who's using your app differently. So is innovation always something new? Harvard Business Review published this article a few years back describing different types of innovation and what they're good for. So is innovation always AI? Is it machine learning? Is it always billion-dollar startups? So one way to look at research is these four categories. There's basic research, which these are your people in white lab coats learning new things about science. This is unpredictable. It's not well defined. You don't know what's going to happen. Maybe nothing will come out of it. But it's important that people are doing basic research. A little bit more predictable, but just as poorly defined, is where disruptive innovation comes from. So these are your VC startup funded companies, innovation labs inside of a company, maybe a corporate culture that allows 80-20 work patterns where 20% of your time can be spent on a passion project. The inputs are not well defined, but it's a little bit more predictable that you're going to get something interesting out of it at least. Well-defined but still unpredictable are these small teams that create breakthrough innovation, teams that move quickly and work towards some very, very ambitious goal. These are your maverick efforts. If you have a skunkworks project within your company that pops up for a little while to solve some very specific problems, these are usually small teams. They're focusing on some sort of innovation or maybe a large prize, and they create some breakthrough with this focused effort. But the best defined, most predictable innovation happens in what's called the sustaining category. Sustaining innovation is things that happen every day. Okay, for example, we all have a feature roadmap for our products that we build. Would it be considered innovation to more predictably have a roadmap that stayed on the road? Okay. If you can find ways to make UX decisions faster, is that innovation? It is. It's sustaining innovation. If you code apps in such a way that they're more reliable, that they work on more platforms, is that innovation? It is. And if we had better ways to measure team engagement, would that be innovation to your enterprise? Here's what we have to offer as accessibility professionals to every organization where we work. Accessibility is a predictable source of innovation. And in my remaining 10 minutes, I want to give you some tools for telling stories that illustrate accessibility as a predictable source of innovation. I hope you can take these ideas and adapt them to your own organization, your own enterprise, and show them that accessibility is a tool for making faster decisions and creating more sustaining innovation. So this thinking was inspired by a book called How to Measure Anything by Douglas Hubbard. The basic thesis of his book is that anything you can measure that correlates to something you want to change is better than a gut instinct. And so much of the time, even in tech, we're operating on gut instincts. So let's look at some breakthrough innovations from the accessibility. One of them is the OXO brand. So how many of you here have peeled a potato with one of these horrible demons on the left? So on the left, we have one of those horrible old metal veggie peelers. This is something that my grandmother, my mom had. And on the right, we have the OXO brand veggie peeler with this nice firm handle. You know, Sam Farber started the kitchenware company OXO when he saw his wife struggle to hold a normal vegetable peeler. She had arthritis, and it inspired him to start thinking, why do kitchen tools have to hurt your hands? Why can't they be comfortable? And thus OXO was born. Again, we have this pattern where something was created for not the average user, but people in the middle validated those insights. PillPack was a company that set out to produce a pill bottle that was easier to open for people with arthritis. If you've, we've all had to open these orange pill bottles. They're terrible. You can't tell if you got it open. You can't tell if you got it closed. But their actual solution eventually was to do away with the bottle entirely and just package medications that needed to be taken together by time and date. That eliminates a whole host of problems for people who need to take their medications on time and reliably. This company was acquired by Amazon for over $700 million. Again, you have something that was started by researching and creating something for people who were not the average user, but it's validated by people that we would call the average user. Put simply, accessibility is not as abstract as anyone thinks. I think many of you have probably seen or used this sort of Venn diagram. If you lined up a Venn diagram of things that fully able people want and things that people with disabilities want, this Venn diagram is practically a circle. And it's our job as accessibility professionals working with designers and developers to find out what those things are, but also show people how these things line up so well. So let's dive into this sustaining innovation category. Let's talk about feature roadmaps, UX outcomes, reliability, scalability, team engagement. Here's what we offer from an accessibility perspective. We can help enterprises make these and see these as being more predictable. Right now, these are ideas that are unpredictable because they can't measure these. They only measure when they know something bad happened. We can make it predictable and find things before something bad happens. So let me give you one very exact example. Here's the tale of two UIs. On the left, we have a design that's supposed to be innovative for the average user. All right, so someone come in to this payment gateway, they can pay their bill, they can pay the full amount, they can input another amount, and it's so innovative because the other amount is sitting on top of the radio button. Wow, they made the form smaller. That's incredible. Now, I'm not going to deep dive on the problems with removing the label text from proximity of the radio indicator, nor will I complain about the use of placeholder text as a label. And I won't get into how this creates an impassable keyboard trap. But basically, this UI that's supposed to be innovative ignores anyone with low vision or people using a keyboard or a screen reader. So as accessibility professionals, we know this is not great design. We can see it way quicker than other people can. What does a UI like this do to the feature roadmap? Okay, so a design team spent days making poor design decisions that didn't matter anyway, because UX research was performed to show that, which by the way took additional time and money, that this UI didn't outperform other UIs, but someone thought it was innovation, so they pushed it forward. Other teams spent time reviewing it, agonizing over the placement of these inaccessible labels and inputs. And it required additional coordination meetings with the design system team and component library resources to create this new radio number input component. Okay, that was all work and money that the enterprise spent to create this UI for no additional benefit whatsoever. So was this innovation? Okay, was this innovation compared to something that could have been built out of simple design system components where there's two radio buttons, you select the other radio button, and an input appears, okay? You get the idea. Radio button, radio button, radio button, input. No, in fact, this component actually slowed down development of a payment gateway and missed ship date and set back the feature roadmap. And they actually ended up building the UI on the right in the end because there wasn't resources and time to actually build the one on the left. It was a big I told you so sort of moment. So look, the bottom line is that accessibility can help teams make UI decisions faster at the design level and keep roadmaps realistic. We see things like this coming a mile out before anybody does. We just know that this goes against the grain of what's going to actually work for our customers and what's going to get built. That is predictable, sustaining innovation. Okay, we can predict it because we see these types of UI problems that other people don't see. This is the Stanford Apple Store in Palo Alto, California. It's attractive, it's inviting, it's comfortable, it's beautiful. There are zero obstacles to experiencing the products in the store. And we would want the same feeling for any digital space that we operate. Now, this building was created with accessibility in mind from the beginning. It creates an inviting experience for all. And at no point did accessibility get in the way of a good experience. And likewise, accessibility does not get in the way of good UX in the digital space. In fact, it allows us, again, to predict good outcomes, measurable good outcomes. We talk about the WCAG principle of perceivability. In UX, they might use the word discoverability. We can measure that. We know how to measure perceivability with contrast, text size, by removing barriers for people with low vision. We can make content more discoverable for everybody. We know how to measure that. We can put a number on it. And if you can put a number on it, you can incentivize it. We know how to measure whether or not something is understandable. Okay, so at the simplest level, we can analyze the reading age of text. And if content is structured and information architecture doesn't make any sense when it's being read aloud by a screen reader, we know it's probably not going to make sense to other people who are trying to consume that same content. So does your organization want more predictable UX outcomes? We can offer that. We can measure that. The ability to measurably predict UX outcomes is sustaining innovation. Because if we can look at a design and realize, hey, the contrast on this is too low, the page structure is really weird and just doesn't make sense, that's going to affect all users. Other people don't see that because they're not looking at it through the lens of accessibility. Let's look at a couple more principles. Operable and robust. Operable means that it actually works. No, it actually works. It doesn't just work with a mouse or with a tap on the screen. It actually works in a semantic way. Now, I don't know about you, I've never come across a UI that works with a keyboard and doesn't work 100% reliably with a mouse. We know how to measure if something actually works well, or if it just barely works. Things that just barely work with a mouse and they don't work with a keyboard. Something that works with a keyboard works 100% of the time with a mouse. we talk a lot about robustness. And one way that I describe robust is that it works everywhere, works on every device, every platform, every assistive technology. A robust application is device agnostic enough to work anywhere. Accessible code is also performant and fast, meaning that it's fast even on a slow connection or a low computing power device. When we see an inaccessible UI, we know it's going to affect how well it works on different platforms, because the amount of scripting to hack accessibility back in is going to degrade that experience. It's going to degrade the reliability of that application. So predicting whether an app will work reliably is sustaining innovation. We can do that because we look at it through the lens of accessibility. Now, here's what gives me hope. I hear a lot of folks in accessibility who are burned out, or they say, why don't people get it? If just more people would get it, we'd have what we want. We've been here before. Big changes can happen, and history is what gives me hope. How many of you remember when the first iPhone was released in 2007? And back then, if you wanted to look at a website, you had to pinch and zoom in because there was no such thing as responsive design. Everything was tiny. You had to tap on buttons. It was like having low vision and a motor disability at the same time. And so in response, we tended to look at people using a smartphone as kind of an extreme use case. There's not so many people doing that, so we didn't worry about it too much. But eventually more people started using it. You know what we did? We actually we bolted on a separate mobile version on top of our websites to accommodate people who were using a smartphone. Does that sound like anything that we see nowadays in the accessibility space? And we made a lot of assumptions about mobile users that weren't true. Turns out people on mobile devices weren't just performing quick tasks, they wanted to perform all the tasks they could on their desktop machine. Now, what happens is 2010, Ethan Marcotte invents responsive design, writes a book about it, which taught us how to design mobile first. And that was a big revolution. That was the last big innovation we've had in the UI design space. We went from that old-timey design that was slow, only meant for desktop, to sophisticated sports car responsive design. It was amazing, and it was a time where we could learn. Now, not everybody learns. We learned that it was crucial to consider mobile from the beginning of our design processes. People who were paying attention started doing this, and it's an all-brainer now. Nobody nowadays says, I don't know if we really have mobile customers. What was the difference back then, though? What made the difference between teams that adopted responsive design and teams that continued to shell out desktop designs with a mobile version? It was engagement. People who were engaged in their work were paying attention, and they saw it as the way forward. Engagement is a huge issue for corporations. A disengaged employee costs around $3,400 for every $10,000 a year in annual salary. That's huge. Would your company like to know which employees, which developers, which designers, which product managers are engaged and which ones are not? There's a dirty little secret we've been keeping to ourselves in the accessibility space. Accessibility sheds light on this seemingly intangible metric of engagement. Now, what is engagement? So engagement is this: when a team or an individual is emotionally engaged in their work, they give discretionary effort above and beyond what's asked. Guess what? We know which teams are engaged. We know which developers, designers, product managers are keeping up with their industry. When a product manager says, yeah, accessibility is important, but I really want this feature to pop above the fold, you know they have not been to a design conference in the last decade, if ever, because anyone who's engaged is constantly making efforts to level up their skills, to become better at what they do, either by attending conferences and learning, by provided trainings, or they're learning on their own. This is a hard truth. Teams who don't invest in discretionary effort will not grow their understanding of accessibility. They won't empathize with people using their products. They don't see ways to improve performance and experience. They value completion of the work over anything, rather than creating good quality experiences. A better metric for employee engagement than just, straight up productivity is accessibility. This is another area where we can offer sustaining innovation. Would your company like to know which teams are engaged? I think they would. Now, we want to be sure that we don't oversell accessibility and innovation. We cannot promise to predictably create well-defined disruptive breakthroughs every day with accessibility. It can happen, but what we can offer reliably and predictably is ways to create sustaining innovation by measuring accessibility. We can improve predictability of the feature roadmap. We can predictably improve UX outcomes. We can help companies predictably improve UI reliability. And we can help define team engagement in a way that can't be gamed like productivity can. We can be seen as an asset, helping leadership make better decisions. Because again, leadership are just people. They're scared people trying to make big decisions with incomplete data, and we have better data than they currently have. So thank you. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. My name is Charlie Triplett, and I wrote the book on accessibility. Thank you.
Mic drop. I think, Charlie, that was amazing. So many people saying in the chat, like just within a few minutes of you talking, that it was amazing, and a mindset shift, how to think differently about what everybody here is wanting to do, trying to do. I already have so many things written down that you mentioned. Accessibility is a predictable gateway to innovation. People are making big decisions with incomplete data or incomplete knowledge, designing at the extreme use cases, and average is not your source of innovation. I wanted to mention a book that I don't know if you've read it, but I read it a few years ago, and it's called The End of Average.
I have heard of it. I've not read it, but it sounds like I'd agree.
Definitely, and this book, I'm going to share it there because it was all about that, mainly coming from maybe the school system. And obviously when we were in school, it was like the bell curve. Everybody needed to be in the average. If you were at the extreme edge case, okay, maybe you might be the smarter kid, but if you're at the other end, you know, that's bad news. And it takes on this idea that the average is not the place to be designing. And one of the biggest examples of that, it goes through lots of them, but one example is in the 50s and the 60s, there was a lot of plane crashes with a particular airlines. And they started to look in, well, why? What is happening? And when they brought in different scientists, when they looked at it, they actually looked at the design of the cockpit and the shape of the pilot seat and the space between the pilot seat and the controls, and realized it was designed for the average height of people, when actually that average never existed. And when they adapted the design, then it was more controllable and less plane crashes and less people died. So that idea that the average is not the innovation, the edge case is the innovation, but the average maybe validates that. So absolutely love that. And the two books that well, that book and the other one you mentioned, we've shared in the chat as well.
Oh, good. Thank you for that.